growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Steve Rasner. You're tuned in again to The Lionhearted, a podcast dedicated to those of us that want to keep our independence, that don't want to exchange what we trained for 4 years in college and post-grad programs to work for corporations that may not allow us to maximize our potential. I think that's putting it nicely. You can reach me at Dr. Rasner at AOL, DrRasner at AOL, or you can see where I'm speaking or my in-office courses at the Rasner Institute. It's rasnerinstitute.com. So now that it's out of the way, I want to talk about tonight's podcast. And I want you to know that some of my podcasts are generated by things that happen to me at the workplace. And I hope that's one of the advantages that you tune into me for. Because listen, this is what this is. Everything I tell you is from the truth and my heart. And the truth includes the experiences I had sometimes during a given week. And I'm the guy that has a fee-for-service practice. I do have a couple insurances, not for me, but for the associates that are working with me. And there's one associate that they're 3.5 to 4 days a week. And there's one that's 1 day a week. So I try to be as authentic as I can when I give you these kind of facts about me. And I know how hard it is to emulate what I'm trying to get you to emulate, because the reward is worth it, which is the whole basis of these podcasts. So tonight's subject is based on something that's happened to me recently in my office. And the subject is, do you need to tweak your staff and your expectations of your staff in 2020? And my answer would be, well, it depends. So let me show you where this came from. I recently had a dental assistant that had been with me for 1.5 years or 2 years leave for a job that was 6 minutes from her home. Now I'm only 20 minutes from her home. So there's probably a whole host of other bad things in that hiring and in that relationship between me and the person that left. She was a tertiary dental assistant. In other words, I basically have one dental assistant. I have two major assistants. One that helps me with primarily restorative cases, and one that helps me with surgical cases. And then there's a third assistant that kind of floats between the two of them. So, by the way, when you lose somebody within a couple years, and I got to tell you, the average staff member is with me over 20 years, and I'm lucky about that, but I've had one for 39 years and many over 20 years. But there's always a few that seem to come and go, and maybe it's because I didn't put enough effort or thought into that hiring and then into the relationship once I hired him. But this is what I want you to feel right now. So this employee comes into my team as a third level dental assistant. And I tell you that with not disrespect. I tell you that because I want you to understand this role. So that person very often in my office comes in and they'll be an extra hand during surgery. And when I say surgery, my surgeries are often 2 and 3 hours of taking out remaining teeth, doing a full flap, seating a guided bone reduction, and then an implant. And it's a lot involved with it. And this person often has to do something as menial as retracting lips. Okay? So, because my dental assistant to the left is handing me instruments, suctioning, and she's in it. And it's not enough hands often to have the access and vision that I want. So I actually have this other person, and she gets things, and And that's not all she does in my office, but here's my point. This was a person who had been dentally trained as a dental assistant and then disappeared off the map because of children for, I think, 7 years. So really hadn't worked in 7 years. I had no idea as to what to expect. It's blowing my mind. Not how I need to tell you this, because I've had so many people in this position that were average that I forgot what it's like to have a superstar that doesn't know they're a superstar. Picture in your mind what those tennis ball people at Wimbledon or the US Open on the side, those young kids that run out and get the ball and then bring it back so they don't waste time during the tennis match, and they're at attention and they never deviate. Or picture the guards in the red coats and the big furry hats at Buckingham Palace that never move. That is what this person's dedication is to that little part of a bigger job in my office. In other words, she's standing by. Like I just and I'm doing intense involved surgery. And then I notice how quickly she picks things up. And I'm being as patent with you as I can possibly be in telling you that's what this podcast is dedicated to. Because just that little hiring, and that, in my office, that's not a high level position to start. I guarantee you she will not be in that position long. I think you need to ask yourself, I think you need to look at all your departments, and the most important department for sure is your front desk. Yeah, it's more important than your hygiene. It's more important than your dental assistants. It's more important than you, doc, because they rep you. And if they don't get past you, if that patient who calls your office doesn't get the right vibe and message, if you happen to have somebody in that position that is moody, has baggage, and on some days of the week is not into it, it's a problem. It is a problem. I used to have a slide in my presentation called Everything Counts. I wrote it 25 years ago. No, I didn't. 20 years ago. And I didn't realize how incredibly on spot I was with that. Everything counts. And the most important part of the office, of course, is the first person that has contact. But I want you to look at those. I want you to just take an hour in the next week or two during the holiday season and write it down. Write down your front desk members, and then your hygiene team, and then your dental assistant team, and even if you have insurance, even your insurance and the people in that department. And I know for some of you, this is just a couple of people. Ask yourself the question, have they gotten stale? I mean it. Do they have any of the attributes, good or bad, that I'm about to lay out for you? Because I tell you, I think of these things, what will help you the most? Because it's blowing my mind. 39 years into practice. It is blowing my mind how much I value this. She doesn't even know I'm talking about her, of course. I'm sure she doesn't watch my podcast. I don't even know she knows I have a podcast, quite honestly. I'm serious. But I'm telling you, her learning curve is just mind-blowing. And here's the problem. The older you get, the longer you're in practice, the less you want to go through this again. It's kind of like relationships, I think. And you're on the dating scene for 15 years, and you have a series of 2-year relationships, you get pretty burned out and don't want to do it again. I don't know what this has to do with dentistry, but that's how I talk, and you know it. So maybe that's why you tune in. But here's my point. It's making a big difference in one little phase of my office. And I want to take you back to about 5 years ago. And I know you can relate to this. I had 2 different employees that had been with me. One had been with me for 12 years. and the other one had been with me quite some time. And to be very clear with you, one was in the insurance department. And I told you, I take a couple insurances for my associates. And there are people that slip through the cracks that have bills. So that's what this person's role was. And they were pretty good from what I could tell, but they were so negative and had every other aspect of a person that impacted me negatively. And I tortured myself for months and years at times that I was going to make a move and get rid of them. And I did. It was really hard to do. You have anybody like that in your team? Like you're almost scared to fire them because you know them so long. Like they're going to come back and shoot up the office or something, or try to get you in trouble if there's something you haven't done that's exactly in the reign of what you should be doing. I don't even know what that would be right this second. But it gets scary, right? I mean, it does. I don't want to get into the relationship thing again. I was going to say it gets scary like an ex-husband or wife that becomes your ex. They're not always your best friend, right? Get me? Mine is, by the way. Anyway, here's what I want to say. You got to make that move. In my lectures, I call that fire the witch. That's one of the goals of 2020. If you have that, I'm telling you, this is how you know. If you have a person on your team, and some of you do for sure, because you bought a practice, you kept the employees, which was the right thing to do. And one of the employees, usually the one that's been there for 20 years of the practice you bought, is just as toxic as it gets. And everybody knows her, and she knows everything about the practice. And that's why you put up with her, and that's why you keep her. You're scared to let her go or him go because you're afraid that they're going to spread so much bad will that it'll hurt you. If this person has the ability to impact your blood pressure, as in raise it, just by their presence, if you cringe, if you physiologically, I mean this, feel a change for the negative, when you're around them, then I would say to you, make 2020 the year you're brave and move on. Even if you don't find somebody for a year, for 2 years, that maybe did the job as well as that person did, even though they were toxic, it is a good thing. Let me tell you something. What you and I do is really not easy. There are probably easier ways to make a living. To me, it's absolutely worth it because I love dentistry. And I know a lot of you listening to me love dentistry. So I get to do something I love. I'm not even ever thinking about retiring. I mean, I'll cut down. You may wonder, why does he work? He's 65. Because it defines me. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, it is what I am. I spent my life not learning how to golf or photograph sunsets. That's cool if you do that. But that's not what I did. And without dentistry, I'm not sure what I would be. So to me, I'm kind of living the dream. I get to do what I'm good at every day. I get to do, and there's times and weeks of the year, I know you've heard me say this, where I don't feel as enthusiastic about it. But this requires a lot. It does. I never pretend on these podcasts that, oh my God, this is so easy. I've never said that to you. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I work 4 days a week. I don't work any nights. I get to do cool stuff that I never dreamed I'd be able to do. I lift people's sinuses. I take pieces of bone and tissue from different parts of their mouth and move it around and grow bone and tissue. And oh my God. No, I never dreamed I'd be able to do all that stuff. And people trust me and believe in me. And nobody gets that probably but my patients. I don't know that my family really knows what I do in that little operatory or what you do. I know I'm off on a rant here, but it's a good one. It is. And I guess my point is that you need as much help as you can. And certainly that's talking about your team. So let's talk about it for a few minutes about being specific. I wrote some things down here about tweaking your team in 2020 and what would I be looking for, and what, of course, the converse would be a problem for me about these things I'm going to tell you. Number one, does your team members in all those departments, are they punching a clock? As my Michelle, who's with me 39 years, certainly doesn't punch a clock. And I know that some of you have a Michelle. I don't pretend I'm not fortunate. I'm talking about a person who probably I owe 5 years of vacation days to, because she doesn't take vacations. Because, I mean, she'll take 3 days and 4 days because she's so committed to my office. I'm lucky because she looks at it like we try to make all of our staff look at it, which is a good thing to motivate them, by the way, as she owns it. And I'll talk about motivation before this podcast is over. So we don't always all have a Michelle, but in general, does the employees that you have in whatever divisions you have, do they show up? I mean, do they show? What I mean by that is, do they show up to be that person 100% the whole day, every day that they show up? Because I have several that do. I have several that don't also. You know, the one I alluded to earlier to start this podcast, you know, I didn't even know if I'm probably getting in trouble for this. I'm not sure she was straight every day. Probably was, but there was times that she seemed so disconnected to the presence of being in the moment is what I'm talking about. I remember I started this podcast talking about this new staff member I had that is so in the moment, even in a lesser position, is making my work better. Do they call out a lot? That's a problem. There are people that you will hire that'll never call out. I mean, I can tell you, I have 20 employees. And I would say 20% of them call out enough for me to do something about it. That's a problem. So you should be looking for people that show up, that don't call out, that bring new ideas. I mean, real ideas. Maybe they're good and savvy in IT and social media and things that can bring legitimate, like they have no agenda. They just want the office to grow. It's weird that sounds surprising to me as I speak to you, but it's true. We don't find people like that so often. And they don't need to be paid all the time for breathing the air that's in the office. You understand what I mean by that? Here's what I mean by that. I have a problem with a team member that anything they agree to has to be automatically associated to their paycheck. Even if that's true and it's legit, it bothers me, but that's their mindset. And I think it should bother you. Let me give you an example. For 7 years, I had a radio show. You know, all of our journeys. So don't get all bent out of shape if, oh God, he had a radio show. That's why he does all these things. I did it because it was 100 yards from my office. It was a football field's length. And it was like a mom and pop from Andy of Mayberry, like from the 50s. And I could literally ride a bike there or walk there. And I did a show there for 7 years with Michelle, my new patient coordinator, my financial coordinator. She never asked me. I mean, I gladly would have paid her. And she makes significant money in my organization when you include her salary and bonuses and things. But I would have, but she never asked me for it. She was into it. She loved it. I wanted to stop it many times over the 7 years. It was a call-in show, by the way. If you ever want me to talk to you about how to do that, I gladly would. It was very instrumental. It's called The Truth About Teeth. And it went on for 7 years until they sold the radio station, or I would have kept doing it. And I can tell you the ins and outs and, you know, what's a good fee to pay. I had to pay a fee. So it's basically an advertising call-in show, but you can make it, trust me, so it doesn't sound that way. And then we did. In fact, at one time we had several shows on different radio stations. She never asked me to be paid for that. You know, I don't know where the line is for that, but That is something I look for. And you can't tell that, obviously, for several months when you're working with somebody. So look for people that show up in the moment, is what I mean. I don't mean physically, I mean that also, that they don't call out a lot, that they bring new ideas, that they have positive energy, that they're willing to do stuff for the office for its enhancement without always being concerned, or that's not the feeling you get anyway about what's in it for them. Where do you find people? I will tell you this. It's worth it for you to never stop looking unless you go through all your departments as I asked you to over the next couple of weeks and you're 100% happy. If you are, God bless you. Take good care of them. Okay? Make sure they don't go anywhere because that is a luxury. I don't care if you only have 4. You have 4 great ones. God bless you. And listen, from lecturing for 21 years, I've met a lot of staff members, and there are plenty amazing people out there in many of your offices. But I think most of us understand what I'm getting at today. You can become very complacent. We know it because it's hard to change. It's easy to stay status quo. It's easy not to do this exercise. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you that because the one little person that I'm alluding to start this podcast has me thinking of all my departments now. Like maybe I've gotten too complacent. I know how it is. You go home on Thursday or whatever day you stop working. You go back to the work on Monday. You got so many things on your plate. Maybe I have a hard case to do at 10 o'clock in the morning on Monday. And the last thing on your mind is tweaking your staff in 2020, as I'm asking you to. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to tell you that if you have people dragging you down or not growing. Okay, here's another example. I have dental assistants with me for 20 years that really don't know how to make quality provisional crowns over 1 unit. Maybe they can make 2 units. But I mean, like, if you looked at my work, would I be proud of the temporaries? I mean, I have one. I call her a master assistant, and she's phenomenal. She can make a temporary better than you and I can. She gets it. It's like Bill Strupp from Clearwater, Florida's staff members. His clinical dental assistants are amazing. They understand margins and the need for papillae to breathe and all the stuff you and I learned in dental school. But I have 2 dental assistants that 2020, I need more than one that can make an anterior 3-unit, 6-unit bridge, whatever it is. So that's one of my goals for 2020, by the way. And I'm sending them to a course, incidentally, at Bill Strupp's in Clearwater, Florida. You can write to me if you want to know more about that. So where I would look, the number one place I've always looked, and I used to keep a written list before computers on my closet I did, and it's hard to do this stuff, of patients I would love to work for if the availability ever happened. Like they left their job or I needed somebody like that. Now, naturally, that doesn't apply so quickly to a dental hygienist. And I wouldn't hire somebody raw, I don't think, for dental assisting without at least sending them through school first. But for front desk, reception, possibly in the dental insurance department of your office, and as a lower level dental assistant, I would, for sure. I used to write down the names of patients that I would love to work. Why? Because you know a lot about them. Number one, you know if they're the deadbeats. Do they pay their bills? Do they show up for their appointments? You know, here's the thing that nobody wants to talk about. There's no way to really know what you have in a staff member for 6 months to a year. I'm not kidding. This may sound horrible to you, but things that I also look for. Ready? Do they walk fast? Do you have anybody, because I do, that it seems like they're walking in sand in their bare feet, and they, like, no urgency about anything of getting to the next spot in my office to do a function or performance I asked them to do. I mean, they might, they're just mediocre, is my point. Think about in 2020 and surrounding yourself with a step up and try it. Hire an extra employee. You don't know that explanation to anybody. Hire an extra staff member or interview somebody and bring them in if you can part-time. If you're in a position financially to do so, I hope it's coming across clear. I'm trying to get you to really look in the mirror with your team of what is you have. Have you become complacent? Are you, the doctor, just going through the motions when it comes to your team? Because they represent you, man. They're going to make you better or worse. They are. So things I won't listen to that I think are lines in the sand, negativity for sure. You know who I'm talking about. In your team, there's somebody, they're so negative that they change you when you're around them. They don't change when you give constructive input. In other words, you bring them in, you try to change them because maybe they have many assets that you do like, and you try to get them to change and do things a different way. Good example. By the way, you may want to write to me for this, those of you that do surgery. There's a company called Fast Notes. Fast Notes. It's amazing. If you do surgery, you put it on an iPad, you input the parameters that you've fed into the iPad before in this app, and it prints out this beautiful report of your surgical procedure as if you're in a hospital. Patient was brought into the operatory room and is put in a supine position, blah, 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 blah. Given blank liters of nitrous oxide, 3 carpules, but anyway. I've implemented this in 2019 in my office because I've always wanted to up my game in my legal documentation. I Googled it and found a company. And I'm finding it hard with some of my staff members. They want to write it up their way. And quite honestly, the way we were writing our charts up was unacceptable for my standards. And I'm pretty thorough, but this blows away what I was doing. So that's what I mean by being open to change. Not being accountable. That's a major thing I don't think you should put up with. You know, something goes wrong in your office, whatever it is. I tell my staff members, I would rather 1,000 times you say, hey, you know, that's on me. I will do better, doc. You're not going to have to worry about this again. Here's what I'm going to do. As opposed to, I don't know how it happened. Being disrespectful to anyone is a deal breaker. That should be apparent. It should be obvious. And that goes along with a lot of the other things, the which thing that I brought up earlier today. So let me talk for a minute about those of you that don't have that have a good team, and how can you motivate them. I will tell you 3 things. And you can drive yourself crazy and pull your hair out over what to do to motivate your team. You know, like we're coming on the Christmas holidays. So do you get them a limousine and, you know, give everybody a $100 Visa gift card? Only if you've done good stuff all year. If you're an SOB for the past 51 weeks, don't waste your money. That is a waste. Here's how I do it. I can do this with 20 people. I can. But I'm about to tell you. I've told you this before, but I'm more confident than ever that it works. Profound. Is I surprise them with an unexpected financial bonus along with their check. That number can range from 200 to 1,000. It's just the truth. I would rather do that any day of the week than give raises and be locked into raises. Unless it's clear that the employee we're talking about is on the lower scale of what they do for you, okay? Unexpected bonuses, for no other reason, have a powerful impact. I mean, think about if it was you. Like you get a paycheck like I do, right? Well, when's the last time you looked at your paycheck and there was another paycheck in there with a little note of appreciation? Of course, that would be from yourself, and that's why we can't really do that. But that is a powerful, and it doesn't come from me. You can Google it if you want. But unexpected rewards to the human race in general is a very long-lasting effect. It's way more effective than tying the employee's money and bonuses to a long-term increase in business in the practice. Like over 6 months, if we increase by blah, 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 you will receive such. It's less convoluted, it's easy to understand. And that doesn't mean you can cheat the system and not reward people. That's very important. And I should also tell you that I try my best to keep people at the top of their position if they've earned that in whatever they do within my office. I don't know too many doctors that went under, or if any, because they paid their team too much. I think it's because you spread yourself too thin is why you get in trouble. That being said, I think the most easy and profound way to long-term motivate your team is to show verbal appreciation, educate them, which is a big deal. Invest in them yearly, and I don't mean once a year, a couple times a year with courses, and I don't mean the obligatory CPR course. I mean with something germane to what they do, to the office, legal documentation, one day update in pharmacology. It's endless. I told you what I'm doing with my dental assistants. I have to fly 2 of them to Florida. Now I'm doing that for me, but it also is incentivizing to both of them. I'm putting them up in a hotel for a couple days. It is Florida. They're on the beach, but they're going to learn how to improve their skill set in making provisionals. So that's another way to motivate them. So investing in their education, being flexible with them, with their personal lives, if they've earned that. So all of us have that employee that's been with you for 3-5 years. They want to go to night school for whatever reason, or they want to do this or that. I think I always say yes if it's a valued team member, and I work around their schedule, which is not always easy. I've even done it for employees that wanted to coach high school high school soccer or something 4 months a year. That'd be easy for me or you to say, oh no, you're employed by me, not the soccer team. I don't think that's a very proactive way to keep people long term. The bottom line is staff members like a leader to be a leader. I can tell you that. I'm not the guy in my office, and I don't know if it's a good idea for you to, hey, everybody, my name's Steve, and you can call me Steve. Now, your doctor such and such. In my opinion, after 39 years of this, your doctor, whoever you are, your team members like you to be the doctor. They like you to be the clear leader, and they will be with you longer as opposed to somebody that is wishy-washy about your role in the team. You should be clear about your expectations, and you should not push to the side because you don't have an elaborate system. When I tell you to reward them, those of them that have earned it with unexpected bonuses, that doesn't mean you can put your head in the sand and not pay attention to that part of the doctor-employee relationship. I hope I didn't go on too many tangents with this, but I'm telling you to look at your team in the next couple weeks before 2020 starts. And do you need to tweak it? Have the courage to tweak it. Get rid of the witch, get rid of the vampire, and try to elevate your team, because you're just one smart. You, doctor, and myself are one small part, of this organization that we expect to carry us for many, many years to come. Have a great holiday, and I'll see you next week on The Lionhearted. See you then.